Am I destroying a book? Well, that's the question. Am I killing the book, or are the books I work with already dead? Books are really alive, but essentially it can't really fully exist until someone else reads it. And that's one of the weird things about a book, right? Books themselves have so much potential to go in, infinite different directions. In a way, I'm sort of freezing that life, into just one frozen existence in order to expose it and explore it in a different way. Essentially, 20 years ago, I came up with this way of working that I've sort of stuck with since then. So I seal the edges up of the book, and then I carve into the surface or the top of it, and I'm removing one layer at a time and discovering things as I go. So when I'm carving through a book, I'm not planning it, I'm just kind of reacting to things as I go. So that way it's really a collaboration between me and the existing work, and that's what keeps it exciting for me. It's like walking through a new city. You walk around the corner and there's something that you've never seen before. In a way, I'm kind of reading with a knife as I go through a book, but in a way that's also drawing, because it's a linear line that I'm creating. And then there's, of course, with the text itself, there's a poetry that sort of emerges. People ask if I make mistakes, and I don't know I guess I'm making thousands of little mistakes, but thousands of little decisions at the same time. So when I'm working, there's always other options, right? And that was one of the problems I had with painting. When I was a painter, you have a blank canvas and there's infinite number of things you can paint. Like, where would you even start? But when I'm starting with a book, at least it's a specific, finite object. There's two different ways I kind of think about the book itself. Like, am I exploding the book open in order to show everything I possibly can, or am I sort of closing it and distilling it into specific directions or specific meaning in a way? And so I think the process itself is important, and I'm very honest about it, because it's an investigation, or it's like a metaphor for research, or for the way we gain information. So when I'm working with a book, I want to use something that's interesting and vintage, so it might be 20 years old, it might be 100 years old, but I don't want to necessarily work with something that's an antique, or something that's a one of a kind that can't be replaced. I'm interested in the physicality of information and the physicality of the book, and the fact that you have that comfort in knowing that it's there and that it exists, and that your library will be fine unless you have a fire. But digitally, everything's sort of just up in the air and things are constantly disappearing. You can access a paperback book from 200 years ago easier than you can a file from 20 years ago. And it's that planned obsolescence, this idea that everything that's digital, it can be manipulated and moved quicker, but of course, the capitalistic nature and everything that's being designed right now is intentionally doing that in order to, take your attention, but also in order to break eventually. The book itself is such a stable physical format that when we lose that physicality, we lose that stability, and we lose that connection to sort of a built, vetted temple of truth, essentially. With my work, I want to sort of explore all those tensions. So my process, being completely subtractive, is sort of about erasure. And in a way, I'm participating in erasure. I'm kind of fragmenting and breaking it down into these tiny components. We want that instant gratification. We don't want to sit and read the whole book. We want to see everything all at once. So how is the book itself going to become, flashier, or circumvent that time that you need to dedicate with the book? I don't think that books are actually dead. But it can be seen as like an autopsy in a way. They can tell us something about what we valued at a specific time, but we don't necessarily use reference books, encyclopedias especially, or really any books the way we did before. we're left with this material that we know is valuable and full of history and full of meaning. And, in a way, it's sort of like a natural history museum. A natural history museum will display a dead animal in a specific pose, and you can really see things that you wouldn't necessarily be able to see at a zoo if that animal is just running around. And I think years ago, people used to get a lot more upset about my work when the book had, more of a monopoly on all of our information. But I've kind of been bothered lately, just by the last few years, people haven't been bothered at all by the fact that I'm cutting up books. And so I think that's one of the things about a book itself is once you create a piece of art or create a piece of literature or whatever, you can't really control how other people react to that. So obviously an author can't control whether someone's going to read their book or carve into it. But in the same way, I know that like creating artwork, I can't control how other people are going to value or interpret that. I've been working with books for over 20 years now, and just sort of this slow meditative process of carving, usually kind of leads me to the next idea. So I feel like the potential within books and the potential with the material and the meanings that books have in our lives and the metaphors that that books give us, for the way we relate to information today digitally, I feel like it's sort of endless. There's always going to be something missing. I think that's what keeps it interesting for me to keep pushing myself and keep exploring.